Week 12 is in the books. Week 13 is upon us. He joins us every single week to help us break it all down and make sense of the madness. Jake Crain of Crain Company joins the show once again. Jake, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time.
No, man, I love coming on here. You know that. It's amazing how fast this thing goes as we're getting ready for, the conference championships. I mean, a lot to sort out, and then obviously the playoff, but it's a wild time in college football right now, but I know we're going to get into that.
Yeah, Jake, I want to jump into the bracket and the latest college football playoff rankings. We could probably spend this entire segment talking about some of the madness, what we've seen, what we've learned or haven't learned at all about the committee and their decision-making. But let's first talk about Week 12, what happened. Go straight to Athens, Georgia, the game that I was at. Georgia gets the 31-17 win. We discussed this game last week. I felt like it was a spot, Jake, that as kickoff got closer, I picked Georgia to win by double digits. I just felt confident in the dogs at home at night, backs against the wall, find a way to get it done. As the game got closer, I got a little more nervous with the pick because I was like, I can see football reasons why Tennessee can win the game. I had just seen Georgia and Oxford the week prior and the way that they got, essentially physically dominating the game. Mm-hmm. But you just trust Kirby Smart in a situation like that. You trust him in that spot with his team at home at night, backs against the wall. And that's exactly how it played out, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the reason me and you picked them. And we talked about, if you look, at least in the SEC, really maybe just in the SEC, every time a team has had their back against the wall, and what do we mean by back against the wall? You have 2 losses, right? And if you get that third loss, you're out. Or, you look at the second conference loss, how big that's going to be. The team with their back against the wall has come through. The only time that didn't happen was because Alabama and LSU both had their backs against the wall, and somebody had to lose. So it's not shocking that Georgia got up to play this game or that Georgia was able to find a way to win. It was going to be a tough task for Tennessee, the way this team is put together. What I do find fascinating is, and again, there's times where I'm right. There's times where I'm wrong. I'm sure people in the comments will say that, and that's fine. That's what makes this fun. But I've been begging Georgia since the second half of the Alabama game to start going up tempo more, because that seemed to be kind of the cheat for them to be able to hit some explosive plays. And it seemed to calm Carson Beck down. I think it helped him with protection. And if you notice, not that they did it throughout the whole drives, but once they would get a first down, they would go fast. And on the big plays after Tennessee kind of made their statement coming out, and it looked like Tennessee may be the one that's dictating the tone and the pace of the game, after Georgia would get that drive starter or the first down, they would go quick. Well, when they did that, those were the 2 times that they got the free play off Tennessee. And that's really what got them going down in those drives. Remember, the first time they were able to hit the big pass, and it kind of slowed Tennessee's pass rush down. Any quarterback in the world is going to be better when they have time to throw the ball. That's obvious. But with Carson Beck, he has shown an inability when pressured to be able to consistently make the big plays that we see Shadur Sanders make, that we see Cam Ward make. And I'm not saying he's a bad player. Nobody is saying that. But some guys have different skill sets. And when Carson Beck has time, he can be elite. And he was, because I think the up-tempo threw the Tennessee defense off a little bit. And then once they got back in their groove, Georgia was in such a rhythm that they weren't able to take him out of it. And I think Georgia's offensive line garnered more confidence throughout the game to be able to protect him. And since they were able to protect him, and we know Georgia has really, become a passing team somewhat this year, not that they wanted to be, but it's who they kind of had to be, that run game started to come along. You were able to achieve balance, and Georgia was able to move the ball, and it opened things up in the seam for Carson Beck, which is where he wants to throw the ball. Every smart quarterback understands the quickest throw is in the seam. Even when Carson Beck has been pressured and turned the ball over, where have most of those interceptions come? In the middle of the field. But you saw Oscar Delp kind of come into his own a little bit and show us some things that he hasn't seen. So I'm not surprised that Georgia won the game, but I'm wondering how much of that up-tempo element we're going to start to see from them. Because if they make it to the postseason, which if Georgia goes 10-2, they need to be in the playoff. We can get into the rankings and all the dumbassery that goes on with that. And I'm going to tell you how we can fix it, because we can talk about problems, but I like to bring solutions. If Georgia's going to be effective offensively, that needs to be a repertoire of theirs. It's just funny that we're sitting here saying Georgia was able to find a way to move the ball against Tennessee by using a tempo that Josh Heupel is known for, and that Tennessee has been a more defensive team this year. And look, I think a 10-2 Tennessee team should get in there as well. But again, that's something where I know we're going to talk about. But Georgia, backs against the wall, played well, looked good in a very important moment. And I think going fast a little bit after that drive starter helped give them the confidence to do that.
Jake, leaving that game in Athens on Saturday night, I kind of had the Happy Gilmore moment where I said to myself, "Uh-oh, Happy learned how to putt." That's how I felt
Yeah.
about Georgia. It's like, "Uh-oh, Georgia kind of woke up." How nervous you think the rest of college football should be about Georgia? Because they play
Well,
mistake-free football. That's still one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the country in my mind.
yeah, but with Georgia, it's more like they remembered how to putt, not that
Right,
they learned
right,
how to
right,
putt.
right.
It's like they knew how to putt, then they forgot. Then you got the yips. And then we've seen, and again, against Texas, it wasn't some glowing offensive performance, right? It was a lot of that was the defense putting the offense in really advantageous situations. But it's from a confidence and momentum standpoint. Because some teams, when they get momentum, can really do some damage, and other teams can blow the whole town down. And Georgia's one of those teams where if they get momentum, they can just start beating the shit out of everybody. So, yeah, college football, when they see Georgia, they understand what that G has meant in college football. And we know how good their personnel is. And if you give an 18 to 22-year-old that's that talented athletically, the confidence and momentum needed collectively as a unit, Georgia can be as dangerous as anybody because they're as deep as anybody.
Jake, let's go to the game that took place in Columbia, South Carolina, man. Takeaways from this Gamecocks football team. It's one of those years, man. That Beamer ball magic is alive and well. You come down to the end of it. It looks like South Carolina's about to blow it. They drive down the field, win the football game. How impressed have you been with the run that South Carolina's on? Lenoris Sellers has come into his own, has turned into one of the most, I think, dynamic quarterbacks in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we mentioned it last week, Jake. South Carolina, they're one of the hottest teams in the country right now.
Well, to me, in this stretch run, what have they won, Chris? 5 in a row? Something like that? 4
I
or
think,
5 in
yeah,
a row?
yep.
Somewhere around there. This, to me, was the most impressive.
Mm-hmm.
For this reason, I don't think they played great. And you were still able to find a way to beat a ranked team.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the teams that are the best can win the most ways. I've seen nights where the Warriors didn't shoot the three great. I've seen nights where the Dodgers couldn't hit a fastball. Sometimes it happens. Not that the offense, struggled in this game a lot, but they had to find a way to win when they weren't playing great complementary football. And it's one thing to drag somebody. You want to beat teams as badly as possible, especially as a fan, because it makes the game much more enjoyable and you don't have to worry. But I think this says more about this South Carolina team's maturity and growing together. Because I know there's some older guys on defense, but there's some younger guys as well. But being able to win a game, and I want to give credit to Missouri. I thought they showed up and it was a hell of a fight. And it turned into a fantastic game, one of the best of the weekend, kind of out of nowhere. But to me, this was the most impressive win of the run for South Carolina, because when it wasn't all firing on all cylinders, they were still able to get the SpaceX ship up in the air and to the moon.
Jake, Gainesville, Florida. Florida took down LSU. 7 sacks in that ball game for Florida's defense. We could talk about the issues that LSU has, but I want to stick with the Gators. Does a result like that give you encouragement that Billy Napier can still be the long-term answer there? Because I think fans are maybe still on the fence, but, he's obviously now for sure, I think, going to be back next year. They're probably going to beat Florida State on rivalry. They got a big one this weekend. We'll probably get into in a second against Ole Miss. It's not a foregone conclusion they're going to lose that one, but getting to bowl eligibility with this schedule, we talked all summer how much of an accomplishment that would be. How much does a result like what we saw on Saturday, how much confidence does it give you moving forward with Billy?
Well, I mean, it makes you feel better. It doesn't take you all the way, though. That there's still going to be a lot of questions, and there should be a lot of questions going into next year. But I think if you're Scott Strickland, you took a deep sigh of relief after the win in this game. Especially, we know what's going on with the basketball program, the allegations, whatever. And a lot of people are talking about the deficiencies of LSU, and they should. It's LSU. Me and you have grown up in an era where LSU was nothing but straight savages on defense and athletically. And I mean that term endearing, as they struck the fear of God in you when they lined up. And that's just not who this LSU team is. Not only have they struggled on the defensive side, but it's bled over to the offensive line now. And what they were supposed to be elite at least at this point in time, in pass pro, and it kind of waterfalled on them. But I am just, I went in this game and I was like, this is going to be such a test for DJ Lagway because his lack of mobility because of the injury. But if you're a Florida fan, we can say what we want about Billy Napier, but DJ Lagway is so far ahead in his development from not just a football IQ standpoint, but from a feel and timing standpoint. He beat LSU from the pocket. This wasn't and we've seen Lenoris Sellers do this run around, scramble drill, break a tackle, look downfield, hit a guy for, that's not what this was. Not that that's a great quality to have. There's a role for actors that are great improvisers as well. And not that Lenore's can't get there, but DJ out quarterbacked LSU. He extended the play from inside the pocket. He got the ball out on time. When he faced pressure, he replaced the blitz with the ball. And the timing, not only his fundamentals, because he's got a quick release, but his timing is already next level. So if you're a Florida fan, we can say what we want about Billy and his tenure, but DJ Lagway must be protected at all costs. At all costs. And I do think that went into the one of the ingredients of the recipe of Scott Strickland deciding to keep Billy Napier, because they are seeing this with DJ Lagway. Not only are they going to see it, but if Florida can end the year hot, you're going to go to the transfer portal and you're going to go to recruits and they're going to want to play with DJ Lagway. Just like if you're South Carolina, you want all this momentum because you can go to the transfer portal and replace some of those defensive pieces you miss, because South Carolina is going to be a hot commodity going into 2025. So I was just unbelievably impressed with DJ Lagway, not because of his athletic ability, but his quarterbacking ability to be able to beat LSU from inside the pocket.
Jake, before we get off week 12, takeaways from Texas, Arkansas.
Man, damn. I'll never pick y'all again, dog. I'll never pick, and y'all had a chance. That's the worst part.
They had a chance.
Y'all had a chance.
I was sitting there like, Jake is going to look like a genius.
Dog, I'll never pick y'all again. I'll never believe in y'all again. I'm telling you right now, I won't do it. I won't do it. As long as that group is still there. And listen, I got a lot of respect for T-Will. I thought the defense showed up. And played well enough to win the game. But we always talk about Bobby Petrino and his genius from an offensive standpoint, and that offense was lethargic.
2 weeks to cook something
awful.
Yeah,
you had 2 weeks to prepare for this, and you look like it was like Stephen Hawking rolling his chair around trying to figure out what was going on. And I want to give Texas defense credit, right? We can talk about the schedule and this, that, and the other, but when you watch Texas run around, like, you can tell, okay, like, they're there. But I was so disappointed with not only the plan, not only the execution, but the lack of energy and confidence on offense from Arkansas. It's got to be really disheartening if you're an Arkansas fan, because, earlier in the year, you lost to Oklahoma State, but it looked like, hey, Sam Pittman may have turned this ship around. He made some home run hires as a coordinator. And again, it's just regressed back to the mean. Regressed back to average, and I was just really disappointed with the offensive output and energy from Arkansas. Look, if we're going to screw up, let's screw up because we're going too fast. Let's screw up because we're playing too hard. Let's screw up because we want it too bad. That's not what happened. I mean, you drop a ball that ends up with a pick on a great throw by Taylon Green. Taylon Green's running ability, he keeps trying to escape outside of the pocket and try and outrun everybody like this is Friday Night Tykes, and he's the 12-year-old that's bigger, that's the size of the dads, and can just outrun everybody. You're not going to do that against Texas. So I thought it was a piss-poor performance offensively from Arkansas. And I'm an Arkansas fan now. I'm worried about losing T-Will, because this was a big audition for T-Will, who's going to get a head coaching job. And if I'm him, I'm getting out while the getting's good.
Jake, I saw your brother Blaine on the timeline say that the Sam Pittman era should be over. Are you right there with him on that, or is there some pushback there?
Well, I think it's what are your expectations if you're Arkansas? This is good enough? This is good enough for you? This is good enough for you, which I don't think it is. Then have at it. I mean, we can talk about personality. That's great. But if you want to just hire somebody for personality, start a podcast. That's not what the head coach does. So, I mean, if this isn't good enough for you, there's enough sample size. He's had time, right? He's had plenty of time. It's not a lack of time to structure it and get it going or make new hires or kind of get your footing. I think, not that you want to get in this cycle of firing coaches, but there is a time when you've had enough time that you got to move on. And I think it's now. And I said before the year, watch out for Rhett Lashley. I picked SMU to play in the ACC championship game. They laughed at me. They pointed at me. They threw vegetables at me. They wanted to storm the gate. Oh, Jake, you're just reaching to reach. No, I'm reaching for greatness, son. That's what I'm reaching for. So to me, I'm looking over at Rhett Lashley, kind of the ties he's got at Arkansas. If you're going to make a move, I mean, I don't think it'd be a bad idea.
Jake, before we dive into some of these games in Week 13, let's talk about the latest college football playoff bracket, the rankings, if you will.
Yeah.
We've got 4 of the top 5 are Big Ten teams. Texas is at 3. Alabama's at 7. Ole Miss at 9. Georgia 10. Tennessee, that first team out, at 11. And, of course, everybody's seen the bracket at this point. There is a lot of debate back and forth, and I don't blame them for criteria. What is the committee? The strength of schedule conversations, the whole Indiana conversations happening. Jake, you said you got a solution, so I'm glad you're going to bring a solution to this. I made this point. It feels kind of ass backwards to me that we're talking about hypotheticals and we're trying to debate teams like Indiana and Penn State and Notre Dame. That's where my issue is, at 4 through 6, where it's like, well, how good are they really? And I'm like, we should be talking more about the SEC teams like Ole Miss, Georgia, and Bama that I have seen go toe-to-toe with the very best. And they're not perfect, but I have at least seen them beat teams that are some of the best in the country. And I feel like those two blocks should be flipped, essentially. Yeah. Again, I'll let you get into it. There's a lot we could discuss, a lot of different directions we can go. But I want your thoughts, your takes. What's your issues with the committee and the rankings, and how would you fix it?
All right, everybody huddle up. All right, everybody huddle up. We are all having the wrong argument. We're having the wrong argument. And I think that, and I'm actually going to lead the show on Crain Company with this today. To all the Power 4 loyalists and the Group of 5 protesters, which is what I coin them, because it's class warfare, and it's become this way for one reason. That's because we have no tangible rubric. We have no metric system to be able to point at and say, this is why they are ranked here. I'm done complaining about the rankings because it's fruitless. It's absolutely fruitless. There's contradictions all over it. Why are there contradictions? Because there's no methodology. So on one hand, with a 12-team playoff, we don't need automatic bids. If we actually had a grading system, we would not need automatic bids. And if it was equal for everyone, the debate and argument we should be having is what ingredients go into that recipe. Should it be strength of schedule and eye test and, a couple other numbers? That's the debate that we should be having. But we can't have that debate because there is no ranking system that we can look back on and say, okay, I may disagree with this, but going into the year, this is what you were graded on. I can't make an A on the project if I don't know what you're grading me on. That's why they give you a rubric when they give you the project. So going into it, hey, I need to juice up my strength of schedule. Hey, we need to make sure we get style points in these games. But since we don't have that, it opens the door for conspiracy theories and corruption narratives, and it's turned us into class warfare. It is Power 4 loyalists versus Group of 5 protesters. If you actually had a grading system, Chris, there are some years where a Group of 5 team needs to be in, and we've had a Group of 5 team in. Cincinnati made a 4-team playoff. Screw the 12 team. They made a 4-team playoff. So all the Group of 5 people out there that are like, we'll never get in the playoff. This is we're looked at as the Oliver Twist, the poor kid on the block. There's precedent, right? And to all the Power 4 people that say, oh, well, we don't need a Group of 5 team in the playoff at all. It should all be Power 4. You're wrong too. Every year is different. Some years it may just need to all be Power 4 teams. Some years it may need to be one Group of 5 team. Hell, we could have a year where there's 2 Group of 5 teams. But if we actually had a rubric or grading system to look at going into the year, the coaches would know what to do. The teams would understand the assignment all the way through the year. But you know why they won't do that, Chris, is because that takes all the control away from them. So we are stuck in this doom loop of not knowing how the sausage is made. And if you don't know how the sausage is made, you can't truly evaluate or even maybe want to critique the ingredients to the recipe. That's great. We don't even have a recipe. It is just a bunch of guys going in a room. Nobody can hear what they say, talking about, well, we watched this and we saw this. It's like I'm amazed that some people are surprised that mainstream media in politics, it's the same thing, favor one side or the other. Well, they get paid by the politicians to run ads on there. Do you think these people making the decisions behind the scenes aren't going to go try and just put the teams in that are going to make the most money, even if it's totally contradictory at multiple places across the board? So it's a very simple fix. The argument we should be having is, okay, we need a metric system. We need a grading system. What are the values that need to go into that grading system? Then there's no excuses. right? It's going to be the same for the group of 5 as it is for the Power 4. And you know what? If when that computer and those numbers spit out Boise State at number 11, damn it, Boise State's number 11. Now, if we want to talk about maybe letting the top 4 ranked conferences in that same grading system, getting an automatic bid, whoever wins that conference, and not just the top 4 seeds, kind of where it spits out, right? I'm actually okay with that. But the fact that we're sitting here saying, all right, we have to put a group of 5 team in, and we have to put these other 4 teams in, to me, that creates a problem. It's not meritocracy. But if everybody goes off the same grading system, even if you may not like the result, there is something tangible we can point to and say, this is why everybody abided by these same rules. And when we put all the numbers together, like, I don't know, college basketball does it, or like we've seen the BCS do it. This isn't, we have all these computers. Elon Musk is landing rockets upside down on ramps in the Indian Ocean, yet we can't come up with data points to pick the 12 best teams. It doesn't matter what conference you're from. It doesn't matter if you're Power 4 or if you're Group of 5. If there's 12 Power 4 or there's 2 Group of 5 or 3 Group of 5 or whatever. Let's have the right argument, because we've created this infighting because we don't know how we get there. And when you don't know how you get there, it's like voting machines, right? Well, the voting machines are rigged because we can't see. We need to go to paper ballots. We need to go back to paper ballots. And paper ballots are a system that uses numbers that all the coaches and the teams understand they have to hit. And that will give us, there is no perfect system, but the best way to find the best 12 teams, regardless of class, Power 4, Group of 5, or whatever.
I would agree with you, Jake. There's no method of the madness. So essentially you're saying almost go back to the BCS system for a 12-team playoff.
But we don't have to use that exact same system. Let's come up with the best way. This year, let's sit down, stop putting these power brokers in a smoky room together. We don't need a committee. We need a computer. We do not need a committee. We need a computer. So again, the argument should be, all right, guys, let's all get together and figure out what are the most important metrics or numbers we should use to give us the 12 best teams. And then it takes it out of the hands. There's no thoughts of corruption because your strength of schedule is based off the same thing if you're Power 4 or you're Group of 5, right? It can be strength of schedule. Now, where the problem comes in is eye test, but there's a way, I think, to use numbers to evaluate that. So the argument should be, what ingredients should go into the recipe, not Jesus Christ, is there even a recipe?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Jake, to your point, there's always going to be madness, but again, there's just no methodology right now to it, and I think that you mentioned the automatic tie-ins. I hate those. I just want the 12 best teams. That's it. And I mean,
there's only one way.
Yeah,
there's only one way.
And one of the things I'm taking away now is I'm like, well, I mean, I feel like what I've learned is everybody should just schedule as easy as possible because
that's what they're telling you.
It's more important to have a shiny record than throw yourself into the fire and maybe suffer a couple of marks or two and really challenge yourself because you're not going to get rewarded for that.
Well, Chris, at least, like, again, and it would be asinine to do this, but let's say that strength of schedule wasn't one of the values or one of the metrics used. Okay, well, at least I know that going in. At least I know that now. At least I can chart some course of action because I know what you're grading me on. Again, how can I get a passing grade on a project I don't even know what you're grading me on? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Like, and I'm supposed to wait and you just tell me? But then I look and say, wait, why is Miami ahead of SMU? Like, why did Bama move up 3 spots after beating Mercer while Miami was on a bye and Georgia beat Tennessee? They both have 2 losses. And yes, Alabama should still be in front of Georgia because they have the head-to-head. But why wouldn't Georgia jump Miami? Because they have no system. They just sit around there. I almost think they're like, what do you think would piss off people the most and still make us the most money? Like, but again, there needs to be no committee, right? We need to have somebody that can type it into a computer. Take the fat guy from Jurassic Park that got killed by that little thing that did that. Have him put it in the computer. Stanley or whatever his name was. But we're having the total wrong argument. And at least that way we can look and say, hey, Miami's 9 this week, but we all knew going into this year, these are the numbers you have to hit, and they've played it right so far.
Again, Jake, to your point, there's just got to be some method to it. There's no explanation that doesn't make any sense. Jake, we've had this argument. We're going to get off of this because we got a lot to get into with Week 13. But there's been a lot of chatter. Will a SEC championship game loser be left out of the playoff? Where do you stand with that? What's your confidence level that's not going to happen? Because I think there's some concern amongst the SEC. And I was going to say, Jake, too, it almost feels like with the playoff rankings and the playoff, two things. Number one, hearing Reese Davis on the show say, the one that matters comes out in a few weeks. I'm like, so is this all just bullshit? And they're going to throw out some.
Well, we saw last year it was all bullshit.
They're just going to throw out some random. They waited
until the last week,
right? They're literally doing this for TV ratings. So you and I sit here and argue about it and talk about how stupid it is. But it's almost like, too, Jake, they want to not be SEC biased so bad they're being biased the other way. To me,
look. We listen, and we're going to talk about this on the show. ESPN is like ESPN and the SEC go hand in hand.
Right.
All right. So what they're trying to do, and we see this on political shows sometimes, every now and then MSNBC will say one good thing about the Republicans, or on Fox News, they'll say one good thing about the Democrats. So you can't say, whoa, you're all biased on one side. That's what they're trying to do. But I can't watch that stuff anymore. I can't. You got guys like Joey Galloway out there saying Indiana should sit their starting quarterback. Well, you want to talk about redoing the system? We need to get rid of these guys. We just got – I'm sorry. Not that all of them are bad. There's some that I love. I think Tom Luginbill does an incredible job. I think Cole Kubelik does an incredible job. I think there's guys on ESPN that do a really good job, but they're in the minority. I can't watch that stuff anymore. Just like I don't watch Desperate Housewives. I don't watch Naked and Afraid. I'm not going to watch this stupid-ass dumbassery anymore because it's a joke. It's a joke. The rankings are a joke. That show is a joke. It's nothing but a TV show, right? And that's what they're trying to turn it into. And then they act this way one time, and then the next time they act this, they have no methodology either. And I get it, I guess, because they're trying to get us all in a tizzy like this. So I'm just after this, I'm done complaining about it. But to your point, Chris, I don't know what they're going to do to a conference championship game loser, because they say things in public and do the opposite behind the scenes. They say, oh, it's not going to matter. I don't know. Because again, if there was a recipe that you went in and said, listen, before the season, here's the numbers that we're going to use, strength of schedule, this, that, whatever. And also the conference championship game, if there's an automatic bid that goes in there, I'm actually decently okay with it. That's a reward for the winner. But for the loser, we are not going to tabulate that into the computer. We are going to use what you were before when you were 10-2 against the other 10-2 teams. And you would know that before the season, and you would know that it would negate any punishment from a loss in that game. But Chris, we don't know. Nobody knows. I don't know. You know, I can sit here and tell you, what I would do, but I don't know because they haven't told us. So I'm done with this guessing game. I'm done with this ununiform, no numbered tomfoolery that we go into. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I wish I did. I know it's my job to answer questions, but I just can't just pull something out of my ass like, oh, well, they're definitely not going to punish them. I don't know that. I don't know that at all.
And Jake, that's why you get comments from somebody like Lane Kiffin, who's as blunt as anybody, just saying that, yeah, there's coaches, we don't want to go to the SEC title game. I mean, why put it at risk? I'd rather just finish 10-2, not have to play another one. I'm probably in versus if I go 10-3.
And he would never say that if
my fate's in the hands of the committee if I do that.
Yeah, and he would never say that if you knew, hey, listen, we're going to use it as a reward for the winner, right? Yeah. And you get that automatic spot. Okay, shake hands, but for the loser, we're not going to enter those numbers in the computer. And what you were before you showed up is what you're going to be measured with everybody else who didn't play.
Jake, we could spend all day talking about it, but let's get to Week 13. I want to start down on the loveliest little plains on the village, loveliest little village in the plains. I can't speak today for some reason.
Right now, nothing's lovely. About
I know, nothing is making sense. Auburn, Texas A&M, Jake. Auburn, Texas A&M. Spread comes out at 2 points. A&M, we got the Mike Elko clip, which I know that too much was made of that, but that was funny. Him dropping the Texas instead of Auburn, the Freudian slip, if you will. Just thoughts on this game. This is the chance, man, I feel like, for Hugh Freeze and company to get that signature win. You probably feel how I do, Jake, that I think this is probably going to be another one of those games for Auburn where they're going to have a chance in the fourth quarter. They might lead going to the fourth quarter. And the question will be, can Hugh Freeze and company make the winning calls? Can they make the winning plays? Do they have any semblance of a clutch gene in them? And I feel like I kind of got to see it to believe it. But I saw you talking about this. Everybody wants to talk about the madness of Jordan Hare, and there's ghosts out there. You're going to need more than that to win on Saturday night.
Yeah, like I'm sick of this. And there is, look, Jordan Hare's a voodoo palace, all right? But that should be the add-on to the steak. That shouldn't be the steak in itself. Auburn, the players have to go play good, all right? You can't sit here and just rely. If you want to rely on magic, go to Hogwarts, dog. Like, it's the players have to go win the game. And I'm telling you right now, I think it's going to be close. I think Auburn's defense is going to show up. I think it may look similar to that Oklahoma game, right? But I do not trust Peyton Thorne to not only go get the win, but not screw it up until, and again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Peyton Thorne goes out there and plays the game of his life. He can do it against ULM. He can shove the short, fat kid in the locker, but the minute somebody his size comes up to him in the hallway, he pisses his pants and runs to the counselor's office. So until he does that, Auburn's probably got to win the game without him and hope he doesn't screw it up against a quality team. Now, maybe he'll figure it out in this last hurrah, right, in General Custer's last stand at Jordan Hare. But if you show me who you are enough, I'm going to believe you. Now, one thing that I'm interested to see with A&M is the last time that they went on the road with this freshman quarterback, it didn't turn out great for him. So how conservative is Mike Elko going to be? Because if I'm Mike Elko, I'm looking at this game going, listen, it may take some time, but Auburn's going to beat themselves. Like, why would I go out here and force the action? And I think there's an underlying current here. Auburn's special teams are hot dog water. It's awful. It's garbage juice, right? I mean, if you give Auburn enough rope, they will hang themselves. It's just how long is it going to take with this team? Hugh Freeze is trying to fix it. He's going to try and bring in guys to fix it. And there's some guys on there, Eugene Asante, that do have that dog in them, that can make those plays. And most of them are the young guys, actually, especially on defense. But when I look at this team with Peyton Thorne, why would I trust you? Why? Give me one reason. Kenneth Walker ain't showing back up. Jaden Reed ain't showing back up. Keon Coleman ain't showing back up to save you. Like, so I don't know, man. Like, I know the spread's tight. I would love to be proven wrong on this. We're all fans of somebody. But if I'm Mike Elko, I'm playing this thing all the way right of center. It's super duper conservative. Let's run it around and let's wait for Peyton Thorne to blow it. I think that's what we're going to see because that's all we've seen.
Jake, the rest of the slate, we've got a lot of non-conference matchups, as you'd imagine this time of year, but some of the others, Florida hosting Ole Miss, a lot of ranked on unranked. Florida hosting Ole Miss, Texas, Kentucky will be at that one in Austin this weekend, Mississippi State hosting Mizzou, Oklahoma, Bama, and then, of course, LSU, Vandy, the nightcap. Of the ones I mentioned, which of those do you think could be or will be the most intriguing this weekend?
Well, Vandy, LSU, with what's going on, with Brian Kelly and that team, we're going to find out,
Gold jerseys, Jake. You a fan of the gold jerseys?
Listen,
you like the golds?
I mean, just block somebody, dude. Like, tackle somebody. I don't care if you're going out there in the ugliest uniforms of all time. Go make plays. It's LSU. I mean, it's a scary game. That's a scary look. But then you look at Kentucky, I don't think is going to be able to do anything against Texas. Yeah. A lot of people are obviously going to be talking about the Florida Ole Miss game. And Chris, everybody's like, oh, no, if you're Ole Miss, this is worst case scenario. Well, you were going to have to play against DJ Lagway anyway. I actually think that what happened last week with Florida beating LSU was the best thing that could have happened to Ole Miss. Because we've seen a lack of maturity on this Ole Miss team throughout the year. Sometimes they thought they could roll their helmet out there and win. There's none of that this week. Yeah. Not after what Florida did to LSU.
They're not sneaking up on you now.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin is not going to have to try and inspire anybody out of nowhere, and your life's on the line. Another loss, and you're out of it. Florida's playing with house money. But what's going to determine this game, like it always does, is the line of scrimmage, and both of these front sevens on defense are really good. So you ask yourself, who can run the ball the best? Well, I feel like Jackson Dart's going to be much more mobile than what Lagway is. So I think you have more avenues for Ole Miss to be able to have success running the ball. But then also, who is going to be able to stay on schedule the most on early downs. If you look at this Ole Miss team, yes, they're able to hit explosive plays. It looks like Harris is healthy and coming back. But if you're living in 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 9 in this game, you're going to find yourself in a hole. Not that you can't get out of it, but you really got to find a way to manufacture 4 to 5 yards on first down, even 3 yards, 3 to 4 yards on first down to keep yourself on schedule and keep that balance. And then on the other side, right, can Ole Miss just stop the run and get pressure with 4, right, or their front 7? Who has to funnel resources to stop the run and get pressure? Whoever has to do that the most, both of these quarterbacks do a really good job of replacing the blitz with the ball, and that's where they can hurt you with those short underneath routes, whether they're drags, whether they're bubbles, whether they're slants, whether they're hitches, whether they're now screens. Those are the times where you can get hit for big plays where, hey, we don't have to launch it down the field or we don't have to break an 80-yard run. So that's what I'm looking for. I think Ole Miss is going to find a way I think it's going to be a hell of a game. When Florida's been up, they've been in pretty much every game that they've played in, outside of Miami, really. So, man, I'm looking at this game. I like Ole Miss, but I like Florida to cover the 10.5. I think it is right now.
Jake, my upset special, I think Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby might get their first one this weekend, taking down Mizzou.
Wouldn't shock me.
Wouldn't shock
me at all. It's kind of lining up after what happened to Missouri getting their guts ripped out last week. Now you're out of the playoff. If you're Luther Burden and you're looking to be one of the top wide receivers taken, not saying he would do anything. Jacob Peeler's a hell of a wide receiver coach out there. I know they want to play for him, but it's a different era, obviously, in college football now. So I would not be surprised at all. Mississippi State's shown the ability to punch above their weight as the Lebby is building this thing. So I don't think you're crazy thinking that.
And finally, Jake, week 13, it's interesting how little, which it's understandable, how little, though, we're talking about the Oklahoma-Alabama game, but I don't expect dramatics in that one. I really don't.
Well, if you're Alabama, what you did against LSU was just line up and run it right at them, and you use Jalen Milroe. I don't think you're going to be able to do that against Oklahoma. The problem is Oklahoma can't score. And as bad as Alabama's defense has been, I think they can get away with an average offensive performance, maybe even a couple turnovers, unless Oklahoma just finds some infinity stone offensively. And we've seen Alabama be vulnerable on defense before this year, but they seem to have somewhat righted that ship, and they still have really good players. That's the thing at the end of the day. So the question becomes, can Oklahoma score offensively, which you don't feel great about? And if they can't score offensively, how long before that defensive dam breaks? Mm-hmm. How long before the defense sits over there, regardless of how good the culture or leadership is, and says, guys, we couldn't score if you handed us the ball at the 5-yard line every drive going in. and all of a sudden, there goes Jalen Milroe, or Ryan Williams catches one down the sidelines and scores a touchdown, or Bernard or somebody, and Alabama goes up by 10 to really ice it. I just think the lack of Oklahoma's offensive ability and consistency that we've seen this far will eventually doom them, even if it's a really good defensive performance.
Jake Crain Company, always a pleasure, Jake, to chat with you. Last thing before we get you out of here, there's a big one in the Big Ten this weekend that's going to impact the college football playoff race, Ohio State, Indiana. If Indiana loses, I don't care margin of loss, should they be in the playoffs still?
Well, Chris, again, I think margins matter here.
Okay.
I think
there's some out there that say no matter the margin, they should be out.
Well, it's like to me, then how is Texas in? Like, just keep that same energy. If that's what you believe, that's fine. But just keep that same energy across the board, right? But I think the way this game looks, the aesthetics of it, and Seth McLaughlin, the center for Ohio State, tore his Achilles in practice. That is a huge loss. The Bama transfer going in this game, and listen, Indiana isn't elite at anything. They're just really good at everything, but they have not been tested like this, and they haven't been tested like this on the road. So if you're getting those false start penalties, if you're having those procedural things that are going wrong, how are you talented enough to withstand that against a $20 million roster? I just don't think they are. But if they're able to line up and go toe-to-toe, and Ohio State ends up winning by 10 because they score a touchdown late, or they look like they belong, I think Indiana should be in. Now, if they go get blasted 45-7 and they just, look like they don't belong, well, then we really need to have a conversation. Because again, you say, all right, well, what about Penn State? Well, yeah, Penn State lost at home and Indiana's on the road, but Penn State didn't lose by a ton, and that matters. So, and I think the aesthetics matter here, Chris.
Again, Jake, always a pleasure. Let folks know what y'all got coming down the pipeline over at Crain Company, where they can find you.
Look, we're diving as deep as possible. If you like this show, you're going to like ours. We got Tim Brando on today breaking this down. That's always fun. It's CRAIN and Company. Come hang out with us.
Jake, appreciate you taking the time, man. We'll do it again next week.
See you, buddy.